Let us talk about one of the most exciting television events to hit Netflix in 2026. The show is called One Piece Season 2, officially titled One Piece, Into the Grand Line. It dropped on Netflix on March 10th, 2026, and the world of anime and live-action television absolutely lost its mind when it finally arrived. This was not just any second season of a normal Netflix show. This was the return of something that fans have been waiting nearly 3 years for. 3 years. That is a long time to wait. And when it finally came, it came with all 8 episodes dropping at the same exact time, meaning you could sit down and watch the whole thing in one long session if you wanted to. And a lot of people did exactly that. One Piece Season 2, officially titled One Piece, Into Grand Line, dropped on Netflix on March 10th, 2026, covering 5 major story arcs across 8 episodes: Loguetown, Reverse Mountain, Whisky Peak, Little Garden, and Drum Island. Now, if you are familiar with the original manga or the anime, those names will already have you sitting up straight. And if you are a newcomer who discovered this story to the live-action show, then those words represent some of the most beloved chapters in the entire history of this franchise. Every single one of those arcs has something special and different to offer, and the show brought them all to life in ways that fans were genuinely moved by. The show is produced by Tomorrow Studios for Netflix. Eiichiro Oda, the original creator of the manga, served as executive producer for the series alongside Tomorrow Studios CEO Marty Adelstein and President Becky Clements. That involvement from Oda is not just a PR move. It is real and it matters. The man literally flew from Japan to South Africa during production to meet the cast in person, and his approval of what he saw on set was genuine and emotional. When the creator of the source material is that involved and that happy with what he sees, it sets a tone for the whole production. There will be some changes going into Season 2, with Joseph E. Trotch taking over the showrunning reins from Steven Maeda, who remained an executive producer for the series. Trotch had previously worked on the television adaptation of Percy Jackson and The Lightning Thief for Disney+, and before that had collaborated on Netflix projects, including a series of Unfortunate Events and Dash and Lily. Matt Owens also returned as co-showrunner and executive producer. Together, Owens and Trotch guided the ship through some very ambitious storytelling that required building entirely new worlds, bringing in over 30 new cast members, and delivering emotional moments that have both longtime fans and complete newcomers in tears. This is a Netflix original production. It is not a theatrical film in the traditional sense, although special screenings took place on March 10th in more than 200 theaters in the U.S., Canada, and Japan, timed to the season's global premiere on Netflix. Showings in the U.S. and Canada were held at 6 p.m. local time, with theaters including AMC, Regal, Cinemark, Alamo, and Cineplex hosting these fan events. That theatrical experience was a bonus, a gift to the most dedicated fans. But the primary home of the show has always been and continues to be Netflix. The genre sits comfortably in action-adventure with heavy doses of comedy, drama, and emotional storytelling. The show is rated TV 14, meaning it is appropriate for most audiences, but absolutely does not talk down to its viewers. It deals with themes of loneliness, sacrifice, belonging, the nature of leadership, what it means to follow your dreams when a whole world is telling you to stop. These are not light topics. They just happen to be delivered in a world filled with pirates, giant talking reindeer, assassins who dress like fashionistas, and islands where it literally rains all 4 seasons at the same time. Let's now walk through the full story from beginning to end. Before we dive into what happened in Season 2, it is important to remember where we left off. Season 1 of One Piece came out in August of 2023 and was considered a landmark moment not just for Netflix, but for live-action anime adaptations as a whole. Before this show, the track record for turning beloved manga and anime into live-action productions was not good. Shows and films had tried and mostly failed to capture the spirit, the energy, the sheer joyful madness of these stories. One Piece, Season 1 proved it could be done. By the end of Season 1, Monkey D. Luffy and his Straw Hat Pirates had assembled their core crew. Luffy himself is a boy with a big dream and an even bigger heart. He wants to become king of the pirates, and he wears that dream-like armor. He has eaten something called a devil fruit, which gave him a body made of rubber. He can stretch any part of himself to incredible lengths and take hits that would destroy a normal person. But his real power is not physical. His real power is that people cannot help but follow him. Alongside Luffy is Roronoa Zoro, the swordsman who fights with 3 swords at once, holding one in his mouth, and whose single goal in life is to become the greatest swordsman in the world. There is Nami, the navigator, clever and calculating, and deeply protective of the people she loves. There is Usopp, the sniper and storyteller who lies constantly but is slowly discovering that the bravery he claims to have is actually real. And there is Sanji, the cook whose dream is to find a mythical sea called the All Blue, where every fish in every ocean can be found in one place. At the end of Season 1, the crew had defeated the fisherman Arlong, freed Nami's home village, claimed their ship to Going Merry, and set sail toward the Grand Line. The Grand Line is the most dangerous stretch of ocean in the entire world. It is where the greatest pirates in history have sailed, where the legendary treasure known as the One Piece is said to be hidden, and where the rules of nature itself seem to break down on a regular basis. That is where Season 2 picks up. The story begins Loguetown. Season 2 begins at the Loguetown arc, which is a final stop in the East Blue era and the gateway to the Grand Line. Loguetown is a place where the legendary pirate Joel D. Roger was executed, and it is where Luffy and his crew run into familiar faces like Buggy and Alvida again. Loguetown is a place that carries enormous weight in this world. It is sometimes called the town of the beginning and the end. It is where the greatest pirate who ever lived was executed. It is also where he made his final declaration that sent the entire world into an age of piracy, telling the crowd before he died that his treasure was out there somewhere for the taking. That moment, those words, changed everything. And now Luffy is standing in that same town, preparing to follow in Roger's footsteps. There's a deeply symbolic scene in Loguetown where Luffy actually stands at the platform where Roger was executed. He stands at the very spot. And instead of feeling fear or solemnity, Luffy feels something like electricity, like destiny, like he was always supposed to be standing there. He laughs, not out of disrespect, but out of pure excitement. Because to Luffy, reaching this place is not an ending. It is the starting line. The threat in Loguetown comes from Buggy the Clown, a pirate who actually witnessed Roger's execution as a young man and has his own complicated feelings about the legend. Buggy has a devil fruit power that lets him separate his body into pieces and control those pieces independently. He is genuinely dangerous even as he is genuinely ridiculous, and the show handles that balance beautifully. There's also Alvida, a pirate with a smooth power from her own devil fruit that makes every surface slip off her like she is made of glass. But the most significant moment in Loguetown is not the fight. It is what happens at the execution platform. When Buggy tries to finish off Luffy in a moment that echoes Roger's own death, something extraordinary happens. Something that the show presents as fate, as the world itself intervening, as the universe saying not yet. A bolt of lightning strikes, and Luffy survives through what appears to be nothing more than sheer impossible luck, or something far beyond luck. We also see Vice Admiral Garp in this episode. Garp is Luffy's grandfather, a marine legend who is simultaneously proud of and frustrated by his grandson. The tension between Garp and Luffy, between the law and the dream of freedom, is something that runs through the entire show as a quiet undercurrent. Garp knows Luffy is heading somewhere dangerous. He knows what the Grand Line costs people. And yet there's a part of him, buried deep but undeniably there, that admires the boy for going anyway. We are also introduced to Smoker in Loguetown. Smoker is a marine captain whose body is made of smoke, another devil fruit power, which means physical attacks pass right through him. He is determined to capture Luffy and sees a young pirate as a real threat, not just a nuisance. Their first encounter in Loguetown ends not with one of them winning, but with an interruption that lets Luffy slip away. The grudge between Smoker and Luffy is going to carry into what comes next. After surviving Loguetown, after standing where Roger stood, After somehow making it through every trap and ambush the town had to offer, Luffy and his crew sail toward the entrance to the Grand Line. They are laughing. They are excited. They have no real idea what they are about to face. And that innocence, that complete and total belief that it is all going to work out, is one of the things that makes you love these characters so deeply. The Grand Line's entry immediately underscores the region's lethal reputation for atmospheric instability. The Straw Hat crew experiences what might be called a cyclone of seasons, shifting from heat waves to snowstorms within minutes, before arriving at Cactus Island. But before they reach Cactus Island, they have to get through Reverse Mountain. And Reverse Mountain is one of those things that sounds impossible until you actually see it. It is a mountain where the ocean water literally flows upward. The currents of the sea push ships up the mountain and then send them flying down the other side into the Grand Line. There is no other way in. You cannot sail around it. You have to go through it. The journey up and over Reverse Mountain is chaotic and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The show captures a wild, barely controlled rush of sailing a ship up a mountain with water as a road beneath you. It is exactly the kind of thing that should not work in live action, but absolutely does here, because the production team committed fully to the visual madness of it. At the bottom of the mountain on the Grand Line side, the crew encounters something they did not expect. A whale. Not just any whale, but a colossal whale named Laboon who lives at the base of the mountain and has been there for decades. Laboon keeps ramming his head into the mountain, bashing himself against a stone over and over, which at first seems like simple animal behavior until you understand the reason. One episode is used to punch through Reverse Mountain into Grand Line, meet the island whale Laboon, and introduce Crocus, who used to sail with Roger. Crocus is the old man who lives inside Laboon and tends to the whale's wounds. When the crew meets him, they learn the heartbreaking story of why Laboon stays at the mountain. Years ago, a crew of pirates sailed into Grand Line and promised Laboon they would come back. The whale was young and could not make the journey with them, but they swore they would return. They never did. They died somewhere in the Grand Line. And Laboon has been waiting at that mountain ever since, ramming his head against it not out of madness, but out of grief. He is trying to break through to go find his friends. Luffy, in his completely Luffy way, does not try to explain this to Laboon with words or comfort. He challenges the whale to a fight, draws a symbol on Laboon's head as proof of promise, and tells Laboon that he will come back and fight a real battle when he has become king of the pirates. It is a promise, a real one, and Laboon seems to understand. He calms. He waits. But now he is waiting for Luffy, and somehow that makes the waiting bearable. This moment tells you everything you need to know about the emotional language of One Piece. It is a show that understands grief and loneliness and the way promises can keep something alive long after everything else has stopped. It just expresses those feelings in the language of sea adventures and giant whales and rubber pirates who fight everything they care about. Also during the Reverse Mountain section, Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine make their appearance. These two are odd characters who seem to be causing trouble, but also seem to be running from something. They feel out of place, like puzzle pieces from a different box who have somehow ended up in this picture. We will understand their importance very soon. Crocus reveals to the crew that the Grand Line needs to be navigated using a special device called a log pose. This is a compass that locks onto the magnetic field of each island and slowly records it. Once it has recorded an island's field fully, it points to the next island. You cannot use a regular compass in the Grand Line. The magnetic fields are too chaotic. Without a log pose, you're simply lost at sea forever. Nami, the navigator, takes this information and absorbs it. Navigation in the Grand Line is a completely different discipline from what she has practiced her whole life, and she rises to meet that challenge without blinking. The crew leaves the whale behind, leave the old lighthouse keeper Crocus behind, and sails forward into the Grand Line proper. And the show takes a moment here to let the enormity of that sink in. They are really doing this. There is no East Blue anymore. There is no familiar water. The world ahead of them is completely unknown and completely dangerous. and they are sailing toward it with nothing but each other and a stupid amount of hope. The narrative uses a Whisky Peak setting to undermine the crew's guard, specifically targeting Luffy's inherent, often reckless trust and the gut feeling he develops toward strangers. The town of Whisky Peak is revealed as a mechanical ruse operated entirely by Baroque works. The mayor, Igram, acts under the alias Mr. 8, working alongside Miss Wednesday and Mr. 9 to lure pirates into a false sense of security through celebration and intoxication. The crew arrives on Cactus Island and finds a town of Whisky Peak. The town is the only city on Cactus Island and is named for the rocky mountains strewn with graves that make the summits look like cacti. True to its pirate-friendly environment, a river flows through the island, permitting ships to dock inland. The townspeople are almost suspiciously welcoming. They cheer for the pirates. They throw a party. They pour drinks. They celebrate. This is wonderful and strange because in most of the world the crew has sailed through, pirates are feared and hunted. But here in Whisky Peak, they are treated like celebrities. The crew is delighted. Usopp and Sanji are in heaven. Luffy eats everything in sight. Even Zoro, who trusts almost no one, lets his guard down just a little. And then the drinks kick in. One by one, the crew members start falling asleep. The party, the food, the hospitality. It was all designed to get them unconscious. Because the moment the Straw Hats close their eyes, the smiling townspeople reveal themselves for what they really are, bounty hunters. Every single person in Whisky Peak is an agent of an organization called Baroque Works, and their entire job is to capture or kill pirates with bounties on their heads. When the Straw Hats finally arrive on the island and the town called Whisky Peak, the townspeople look at them weirdly at first before changing their demeanor. The Straw Hats meet a man named Igram, who introduces himself as the mayor of Whisky Peak and tells them that the town loves pirates. But Igram, as we learn, is actually Mr. 8 of Baroque Works, a high-ranking agent in a criminal organization with a hidden agenda that goes far deeper than mere bounty hunting. Zoro was not actually asleep. He saw through it. And what follows is one of the most jaw-dropping sequences of the season. Zoro takes on over 100 bounty hunters by himself. One man, 3 swords, 100 opponents. He does not do it easily, but he does it with a kind of brutal efficiency that reminds you this is a man who wakes up every morning and chooses to become the greatest swordsman who ever lived. Then Luffy wakes up, and then something even stranger happens. Luffy and Zoro start fighting each other. This seems insane from the outside, but it makes a kind of internal sense. Luffy thinks Zoro hurt the townsfolk, who he genuinely liked. Zoro knows those same townsfolk were trying to kill them. The fight between them is intense and funny and a little worrying all at once, and it crystallizes something important about both characters. Luffy trusts people almost stupidly fast, and Zoro is almost always right about danger even when no one wants to hear it. The fight is interrupted by the arrival of Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine, 2 far more dangerous Baroque Works agents who have come to Whisky Peak for a different reason. They are not here for the Straw Hats. They are here because Miss Wednesday has been revealed as a spy, and Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine have orders to kill her. Mr. 5 is a man whose body can cause explosions. Literally anything he breathes on or touches can detonate. His partner, Miss Valentine, can change her body weight at will, becoming as light as a feather or as heavy as a boulder in an instant, usually while falling from the sky towards someone who cannot get out of the way in time. The reveal about Miss Wednesday changes everything, because Miss Wednesday is not just a Baroque Works agent who got discovered as a double agent. Miss Wednesday is actually Princess Nefertari Vivi, the crown princess of the Kingdom of Alabasta. Charithra Chandran plays Miss Wednesday, a mysterious agent tied to the secret criminal organization Baroque Works. She went undercover inside Baroque Works to discover who was destabilizing her kingdom, who was secretly plotting to take over Alabasta from the inside, and she found the answer. But finding it means Baroque Works now want her dead. The Straw Hats end up protecting Vivi from Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine. Luffy defeats them with the kind of explosive focused violence he reserves for people who hurt people he has decided to protect. And in the aftermath, Vivi and her bodyguard Igram, who was also working undercover, explained the full picture to the crew. Someone at the top of Baroque Works is planning to use a criminal civil war to destroy Alabasta and seize control. They do not know who the boss is. They only know his code name, Mr. Zero. Luffy decides, without really thinking about it, that they're going to help Vivi get home to Alabasta and stop whatever is being planned there. This is very much a Luffy decision. He does not weigh pros and cons. He does not calculate risk. He hears that someone is trying to destroy a whole country, and he says, okay, let's go stop that. And the crew, because they trust him, follows. There is also an appearance from Miss All Sunday in this arc. Miss All Sunday is the highest-ranking female agent in Baroque Works, second in command to mysterious Mr. Zero himself. She is calm and serene, and moves like someone who has never once been afraid of anything. She gives Vivi a specific route to travel and offers information that seems like help, but might be something else entirely. Her presence is enigmatic. Her motives are unclear, and she is played with such controlled mystery that every scene she appears in crackles with a quiet tension. Little Garden, another island on the Grand Line, has been untouched since the age of the dinosaurs. With its hot and humid jungle climate, a volcano that erupts hourly, and the dinosaurs that still roam, this prehistoric land is not exactly welcoming for humans looking for a lengthy stay. The crew arrives at Little Garden and immediately faces the obvious problem of actual living dinosaurs walking around eating things. The island looks like the Earth at the very beginning of time. Everything is enormous. The trees are enormous. The insects are enormous. The animals are enormous. And somewhere on this island, two giants have been engaged in a duel that has lasted over 100 years. Their names are Dory and Broggy. They are both warriors from the same island nation of giants, and their duel began over a small dispute that neither of them can even fully remember anymore. But the rules of their warrior culture demand that once a fight has started, it must end with the death of one of them. So they have been on Little Garden for over a century, fighting and recovering and fighting again, honoring a code that has long outlasted whatever the original conflict was about. The tragedy of Dory and Broggy is quiet and devastating. These two giants, who might have been the best of friends, have spent 100 years as enemies, not because they hate each other, but because honor demands it. They share the same island. They know each other completely, and they are trapped in a cycle they cannot escape. There is something deeply human about that, about being locked in a conflict with someone simply because stopping would somehow dishonor everything that came before. Luffy ends up befriending Dory almost immediately, because of course he does. Luffy has absolutely no fear of giants. He sits with Dory and they eat together, and Luffy is just genuinely happy to be there. The warmth of that friendship makes what comes next feel like a punch to the chest. Baroque works as agents on Little Garden too. Mr. 3 and Miss Golden Week are waiting. The Baroque Works agents range in size, style, and ability, including twisted artists who use wax and paint as torture devices, fashionistas with serious firepower, murderous animals, and more. Mr. 3 has the ability to produce wax from his body. He can make it as hard as steel. He can sculpt it at will. And his preferred method of dealing with opponents is to coat them slowly in wax while they're still alive, encasing them like statues while they're forced to hold still and watch it happen to them. Mr. 3 rigs Dory's rum to explode, which wounds the giant and tips the balance of his fight with Broggy. Dory, weakened by the explosion, loses a round against his old rival, and because of the warrior code, this now means the duel must continue even though the conditions were unfair. It is a cruel piece of manipulation designed to keep the giants fighting while Mr. 3 handles the Straw Hats. The main confrontation with Mr. 3 leads to one of the season's best ensemble action sequences. He captures several members of the crew inside an elaborate wax structure, slowly hardening around them as they try to break free. The clock is literal here, because once the wax fully hardens, the people inside will suffocate. Usopp, who has spent most of this series being the member of the crew most likely to admit he is terrified, is the one who has to step up and find a way to turn this around. And he does. It is not elegant. It is not clean. But it works. And the victory feels earned precisely because we watched every moment as fear leading up to it. The defeat of Mr. 3 also involves a volcano. The hourly eruptions that Nami dismissed as just a strange natural feature of the island turn out to be the key to breaking the wax. Fire is the answer. And getting to the fire while the clock is ticking makes for a genuinely exciting sequence. After Mr. 3 is dealt with, there is a beautiful moment between Dory and Broggy. The straw hats explain what happened with the explosive rum. They do not know how the two giants will react. But instead of anger, there is almost relief, because now they know the duel has been corrupted. The results have been tainted, and in a strange way, that frees them. They cannot continue the duel in good conscience. They are still bound by their code, but the circumstances have changed what that code demands of them. The two old warriors share something that looks almost like peace. Sanji also finds an eternal pose during the Little Garden arc. An eternal pose is different from a regular log pose in that it is permanently locked onto one specific island rather than cycling through whatever the nearest island's magnetic field happens to be. This one is locked onto a place called Nanamonai Island, which Vivi recognizes as a stepping stone toward Alabasta. It is a piece of good fortune that appears almost accidentally in the middle of chaos, which is very much how good fortune tends to work in One Piece. The episode's title for the second Little Garden episode, Wax on Wax Off, is a clear and clever reference to the Karate Kid, pointing directly at Mr. 3's power over wax. This season is full of playful episode title references to classic films, all of them chosen with real affection and wit. The crew leaves Little Garden victorious, but not without cost. As they sail away and the tension of the island starts to ease, something goes wrong with Nami. She collapses on the deck of the Going Merry, and the good mood of their victory vanishes instantly. The biological fallout of Little Garden manifests as a critical systemic failure for the Straw Hat Navigator. Nami's collapse is identified as a localized infection caused by an ancient tick, a prehistoric ailment that the crew's modern medical knowledge cannot address. This medical emergency forces a tactical detour to Drum Island, a winterlocked territory formerly renowned for its medical expertise. The crew has 5 days to get Nami to a doctor before the infection kills her. This is the engine that drives the entire Drum Island arc, and it creates a sense of urgency that never quite goes away even as the story expands into something much larger and much more emotionally complex. Miss Wednesday explains that the island is known for its medical expertise, but she does not seem happy about going there. She mentions that it is probably best they keep her true identity a secret once they arrive, because Alabasta and Drum Kingdom have some bad history with each other regarding politics. The history of Drum Island is sad in the way that histories of places abandoned by their leaders always are. The kingdom was once famous throughout the world for its medicine. It was a place people traveled to from distant seas just to be treated by its doctors. But then the king, a man named Wapol, ran away. When a powerful force threatened the kingdom, Wapol chose his own safety over his people. He took his personal doctors with him, leaving the entire population without any medical care at all. An entire kingdom left to get sick and die because their king was a coward. Drum Island is revealed to be a fractured state, suffering from the abandonment of its king Wapol. The episode utilizes a strategic flashback to a diplomatic summit at Mary Geo's to contrast two ideologies of leadership. While King Cobra of Alabasta argues that revolution is a symptom of unheard voices, Wapol views his subjects as property to be managed or discarded. Young Vivi is shown in that flashback, watching the leaders of the world's kingdoms debate and maneuver and posture. And we see the version of her that existed before she went undercover, a young princess who already understood more about the real cost of bad leadership than most adults ever would. The only doctor left on Drum Island is a woman named Dr. Correja. Katie Seagal plays Dr. Correja, a doctor on Drum Island and leader of the Issue 100. Correja is ancient by any reasonable measure, but moves and acts with the energy of someone who refuses to be old. She is fierce and abrasive and brilliant and strange. She lives at the top of a mountain, and she has zero patience for weakness or self-pity. She is the kind of doctor who saves your life and then yells at you for being sick in the first place. Getting to Dr. Koreha is the problem. She lives at the top of Drum Island's highest peak. The mountain is covered in snow, and the temperature is brutal. Nami is sick and cannot be moved under her own power. Sanji is injured from the Little Garden fight, which means Luffy has to carry them both up the mountain in the middle of a blizzard. The episode's physical climax is a test of Luffy's endurance. Eschewing the safer path, Luffy chooses a vertical ascent of the island's mountain peaks to reach Dr. Koreha. This sequence reinforces a theme of self-sacrifice. Luffy carries both a dying Nami and an incapacitated Sanji through extreme sub-zero conditions. This sequence is one of the most purely emotional things the season does. Luffy is not just climbing a mountain. He is refusing to let his friend die. He is making the mountain irrelevant. He is rubber, and his body does not shatter in the cold way a normal person's might, but he still feels the cold. He still suffers, and he keeps moving anyway. Up and up and up, 2 people on his back, because the alternative is simply not acceptable to him. At the top of the mountain is where they first encountered Chopper. Tony Chopper. Fan-favorite character Tony Chopper makes his live-action debut through voice and facial capture, performed by Michaela Hoover. Chopper is a brilliant doctor and an adorable reindeer-human hybrid whose dream is to cure every disease in the world, making him one of the most beloved future members of the Straw Hat crew. Chopper is a reindeer who ate a devil fruit called a human fruit. This gave him human intelligence, the ability to speak, and the ability to walk upright and think and reason and feel the full range of human emotions. It also, very tragically, made him something that neither humans nor reindeer could accept. He was rejected by his own herd for being too human. He was feared by the humans on the island for being too reindeer. He belongs to neither world. He is alone in a way that goes all the way down to the core of what he is. The relationship between Hiriluk and Chopper is the episode's emotional anchor. Acting as a father figure, Hiriluk gifts Chopper his iconic red top hat and introduces him to the concept of piracy, not as a criminal pursuit, but as a symbol of dreams and adventure. Hiriluk's obsession with a miracle cure for the Drum Kingdom, a chemical reaction designed to turn the island's snow into pink cherry blossoms, serves as his legacy. Dr. Hiriluk was a quack doctor, meaning he had more enthusiasm and actual medical skill, but his heart was enormous. He took Chopper in when no one else would. He taught him that being different was not a flaw. He gave Chopper the red hat that the reindeer still wears, which is now one of the most recognizable symbols in all of One Piece. And he gave Chopper a dream, to become a doctor who could cure any disease, to be the bridge that Hiriluk himself could never be. He trained under Dr. Koreha after Hiriluk was gone, which gave him actual medical expertise to match the dream Hiriluk had given him. The story of how Hiriluk died is the kind of story that you do not forget. The tragedy peaks when Chopper, desperate to save a terminally ill Hiriluk, ventures into the Valley of Death to retrieve a mushroom he believes is a cure-all. In a brutal narrative twist, the mushroom is revealed to be lethal. Hiriluk, knowing the truth but moved by Chopper's big heart, consumes the soup anyway. This act of sacrifice defines the character's end. He chooses to go out on his own terms by confronting Wapol at the royal castle, sparing Chopper the guilt of his accidental poisoning, and tasking Koreha with the reindeer's medical education. Read that again slowly. Chopper found a mushroom he thought would heal the man who raised him. The mushroom was poison. Hiriluk ate the soup anyway. He ate it because Chopper had gone through terrible danger to bring it to him, and refusing it would have crushed the boy. He ate the poison his child unknowingly gave him, and then chose to die on his own terms before the poison could take him, so that Chopper would never have to know. He died laughing. He died saying it was a wonderful life. Episode 7 of Season 2, which covers Chopper's backstory and Hiriluk's death, is the episode that earned a 9.6 rating on IMDb. Episode 7 of Season 2 stands out with a 9.6 rating, the highest the show has received to date. while the finales of both seasons received a 9.1. That is not an accident. That episode hit people somewhere deep and true and real. The story of a father figure and an outcast child and the sacrifice made of pure love is not a new story. But the way One Piece tells it, wrapped in the body of a talking reindeer and a dying quack doctor in a kingdom of snow, makes it feel completely and devastatingly original. Dr. Correa attends to Nami and gets her back on her feet. The treatment works. The 5-day countdown ends without disaster. And now the crew must deal with Wapol, who has returned to reclaim his kingdom now that a more powerful force is no longer threatening it. He ran when the danger was real, and he comes back when the danger is gone. He wants his castle and his doctors back, and he does not care at all what it costs the people he abandoned. Luffy fights Wapol. Wapol has a devil fruit power that lets him eat anything and incorporate it into his body or transform himself using whatever he has consumed. He ate his castle. He ate weapons. He transforms into increasingly strange forms using his consumed materials. But for all of that power, he is still fundamentally a coward dressed up in a tyrant's clothes. And Luffy has a very clear relationship with that type of person. He beats them, and he does not waste much time being impressed by them. After defeating Tyrant King Wapol, Chopper joins the Going Merry as a crew's doctor. The moment Chopper decides to join the crew is handled with such delicacy and such joy that it earns every tear. He has spent his whole life being told he does not belong anywhere. And Luffy, who does not spend any time thinking about whether someone fits in, just looks at this little reindeer doctor and says, "Come with us," as if it is the most obvious thing in the world, as if the answer was never in any doubt. Chopper runs away at first. He says he is not joining. He says he is not a crewmate. He yells that he hates pirates. And then he comes running back, because of course he does, because this is a crew of people who choose their own family, and family does not care how strange you are or what you look like or where you came from. The season ends with the Going Merry setting sail from Drum Island. The crew has Vivi on board. They have Chopper on board. And they are heading for Alabasta, where final confrontation with the mysterious Mr. Zero and the full power of Baroque works is waiting for them. Character analysis. Monkey D. Luffy is the center of this show, but he does not function the way most heroes do. He does not plan. He does not strategize in any conventional sense. He does not carry the weight of leadership in the way that traditional heroes do. Instead, he makes one simple decision over and over in every situation he finds himself in. Protect the people he cares about, no matter what it takes. Everything Luffy does flows from that single uncomplicated commitment. What Season 2 does for Luffy is expand the territory of what that commitment means. He is not just protecting his crew anymore. He is carrying Nami up a frozen mountain. He is promising a lonely whale that he will come back. He is deciding in a single breath to help a princess save an entire kingdom because she asked and because it was right. The simplicity of Luffy's moral code is actually one of the most sophisticated things about him. He does not need to calculate whether something is worth doing. If someone needs help and he can help them, that is enough. Iñaki Godoy plays Luffy with an energy that is almost impossible to describe. He is physically rubber in the best possible sense. He moves differently than everyone else. He laughs when he should be scared. He eats when he should be planning. He charges toward danger with a grin on his face that is either the bravest thing you have ever seen or the most reckless, and most of the time it is genuinely both. Roronoa Zoro in Season 2 is shown to be exactly as focused and as solitary as he was in Season 1. But the show begins to reveal the cracks in that solitude. Zoro's dream to be the greatest swordsman is not just ambition. It is a promise he made. There is someone he is doing this for. That person is no longer alive. And so the dream carries a weight of grief along with the weight of ambition, and it makes Zoro something far more complex than the stone-faced warrior he presents to the world. His fight against 100 Baroque Works agents in Whisky Peak is the show's way of letting us watch Zoro in his element. He is not performing for anyone. He is not protecting anyone in that moment. He is just a swordsman with a goal, cutting through everything between himself and where he needs to be Mackenyu plays this beautifully. There is something almost meditative about the way he moves through that fight. Nami's journey this season is more internal than the others. She is the most skeptical member of the crew. She calculates. She worries. She plans for failure, even when everyone else is planning for success. And this season puts her through the experience of being the one who cannot save herself, being the one who has to be carried, being the one who is sick and dependent and powerless. For someone as fiercely self-sufficient as Nami, that is its own kind of challenge. Her recovery on Drum Island, tended by the abrasive and brilliant Dr. Correa, gives her a relationship with a woman who in many ways mirrors what Nami herself might become. Someone who survived terrible things and chose to become stronger because of them rather than broken by them. Usopp is the heart of the season's comedy, but also its bravery. He lies. He exaggerates. He inflates his own legend with stories that have no connection to reality. But the pattern with Usopp is that every lie he tells eventually becomes truth if he tells it often enough. He says he is a great warrior. He says he is brave. He says he is a hero. And then, in the moment that actually counts, in Little Garden when the wax is closing in and Nami and Zoro need him to come through, he does. He is brave. He is a hero. He just had to be put in a situation where being afraid was not an option. Sanji in Season 2 shows more of his contradiction. He is a fighter of extraordinary ability who refuses to use his hands for anything other than cooking. When he is in the kitchen, he fights with his legs only, kicks that carry enough power to bend metal, and he applies himself to combat with the same total commitment he brings to making a meal. But he also has a softness, a real and genuine tenderness that he mostly tries to hide. His care for Nami during her illness, the way he pushes past cracked ribs to get off his own sick bed and check on her, says more about who Sanji actually is than any fight scene could. Princess Vivi is the season's most important new character in terms of plot. She's been living a double life for years, putting herself in genuine danger every single day to save her kingdom, and the weight of that shows in everything she does. Charithra Chandran brings a controlled intensity to the role that makes Vivi feel like someone who's been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and has learned to carry it so gracefully that most people cannot see the effort it takes. Her relationship with the Straw Hats changes her. She is used to being alone in what she is doing. She is used to trusting no one. And then this absurd, impossible, wonderful crew of pirates decides to help her without asking for anything in return. And she has to figure out how to let people care about her again. Chopper is the season's emotional revelation. He is a character the show has been building toward since Luffy first set sail. Everything about Chopper, his isolation, his longing to be useful, his dream to cure every disease in the world, is a variation on a larger theme that runs through all One Piece. That the people who do not fit anywhere are exactly the people who belong on the Going Merry. Miss All Sunday, who is also known as Nico Robin, is introduced this season as an enigma. She appears to work for Baroque Works. She appears to serve Mr. Zero's interests, but her actions do not always line up with that allegiance. She gives Vivi information she should not have. She moves through the story with a calm that suggests she already knows how everything is going to end. She is one of the most compelling characters in the entire franchise, and this season plants her seeds carefully, giving us just enough to be fascinated without yet showing us who she really is. Joe Manganiello plays Crocodile, the man behind the Mr. Zero alias, and he appears in this season mostly as a presence felt rather than seen. His shadow falls over the entire story. Every Baroque Works agent we meet, every plan we uncover, every threat Vivi describes, all of it leads back to him. Manganiello plays him with an elegant danger that makes the anticipation of his full appearance in the next season feel like something genuinely worth waiting for. One Piece has always been, at its heart, a story about belonging, about the people who were told they did not fit, and who found each other anyway and built something beautiful out of their shared outsider nests. Season 2 makes this theme explicit through Chopper. His story is the purest expression of it. He ate a fruit that was supposed to give him something, and instead it just made him too strange for every world he tried to live in. He is the show's symbol of what it feels like to be genuinely other, and his joining the crew is the show's argument that the people who feel most lost are often the ones who have the most to offer when they find the right place to belong. The theme of leadership and the cost of it runs through the season in parallel. Wapol represents the worst kind of leader, someone who takes the benefits of power and abandons the responsibilities. Vivi represents the best kind, someone who gives up her own safety and her own identity to serve the people she is responsible for. Luffy represents something in between and beyond both, a leader who does not think of himself as one at all, who leads entirely by being someone worth following rather than by claiming authority. Grief and memory are everywhere in this season. Laboon at the mountain, still waiting for pirates who will never come back. Chopper in his red hat, carrying the spirit of a man who loved him enough to die for him. The giants on Little Garden, locked in a duel that has outlasted the original conflict that started it. Every island in the Grand Line carries the weight of something unfinished. Every character on this crew is running toward a dream that is also partly a way of running away from something they lost. The ocean itself is a symbol of freedom and of danger in ways that the show uses constantly. The sea is not safe. It never claimed to be, but is honest. It does not lie about what it is. And for people who have been lied to their whole lives, who have been told they cannot have the thing they want, who have been broken by the cruelty of the world they were born into, the sea's honesty is a kind of gift. There is also the theme of what stories mean and what dreams cost. Usopp tells stories. He inflates them and decorates them, and makes himself the hero of adventures he has never actually had. But the interesting thing about Usopp is that his stories are not really lies in a way that matters. They are the future he is walking toward. He lies about being brave, and then he becomes brave. He lies about being a warrior, and then he fights like one. Stories in One Piece are not separate from reality. They are the shape of what reality might become. Filming took place in South Africa, with the production returning to the same base used for Season 1. Filming ran from June 24th, 2024 through early 2025 in South Africa, with Netflix officially confirming production wrap on February 4th, 2025. The production team built enormous practical sets to represent each of the season's islands, and the result is a visual world that feels genuinely lived in. Drum Island in particular is a remarkable achievement. They built a world of deep snow and imposing castle architecture and howling winterlight that makes you feel cold just watching it. The contrast between the bleached white landscape and Chopper's warm red hat is one of the season's most effective visual choices. Red and white, warmth against cold, love against isolation. Whisky Peak has a different visual language entirely. It is warm and amber and golden, like being drunk even before the drinks arrive. The town is built to seduce. Its beauty is a trap. The production design uses color and light to tell you what you need to know about each place before anyone says a word. Little Garden goes fully prehistoric and does not apologize for it. The dinosaurs are rendered with care and weight, and they feel genuinely threatening rather than cartoonish, which takes no small amount of technical skill given that everything else about One Piece leans into fantastical. The visual effects work on the season is generally very strong, balancing the heightened reality of the source material with enough grounding to let the emotional moments land without becoming pure spectacle. The soundtrack is composed by Sonia Belousova and Gianna Ostinelli, who also scored Season 1. The soundtracks for each season have been composed by Sonia Belousova and Gianna Ostinelli, and releases albums in conjunction with the season. The music in Season 2 is more ambitious than Season 1's score, which was already considered excellent. There are leitmotifs for each character that develop and transform across the season, and the Chopper theme in particular does something quietly devastating. It starts small and tentative and grows as he does, and by the final episode, when Chopper comes running back to the ship, the music is as big as a moment. There is also a featured song in the season called Pray to the Sun, performed by Declan DeBarra and The Who, which appeared in marketing materials and carries the emotional weight of the whole season's message. It is a song about hope in impossible circumstances, which is basically what One Piece has always been. The direction across the season is confident and assured. The showrunners made a clear decision to lean into the manga's visual style rather than trying to naturalize it, and that choice pays off at every turn. The episode titles alone show the level of care being applied. Good Whale Hunting, Whisky Business, Big Trouble in Little Garden, Wax on Wax Off, Nami Dearest, Reindeer Shames, Dear and Loathing in Drum Island. These are jokes, but they are also perfectly chosen. They tell you the tone before the episode begins. The fight choreography is improved from Season 1 in significant ways. Zoro's 100-agent fight in Whiskey Peak is kinetic and brutal, and carefully staged to show different aspects of his fighting style. Luffy's battle up the mountain against the cold has a different kind of choreography, the choreography of will rather than skill. And the final confrontation with Wapol on Drum Island uses Luffy's rubber body in creative visual ways that remind you this is a body that should not be possible and is absolutely delightful to watch in action. Critical reception and the audience response. When Netflix announced it was adapting the long-running Japanese manga and anime series One Piece into a live-action series, fans were understandably wary but hopeful. Season 1 earned a certified fresh tomato meter score of 86% and a popcorn meter score of 95%. One Piece Season 2 is even more praised, with critics calling it an effective expansion of the story's world, populated by fun characters and infused with infectious energy. One Piece Season 2 is already a critical smash, earning a perfect 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes from critics and a 96% score from fans. Those numbers are extraordinary. A perfect critic score is the kind of thing that almost never happens for a big mainstream action-adventure show. It suggests that the critical community, which was already impressed by Season 1, found that Season 2 delivered on and exceeded what had been established. Season 2 of One Piece debuted on Netflix with 16.8 million views in its first 4 days of availability. That is a slight decrease from the 18.5 million view debut of Season 1 in 2023, but a live-action manga adaptation still easily became the most watched TV title of the week of March 9 to 15th, and Season 1 saw renewed attention, ranking at number 7 with 3.6 million views. Both seasons have debuted at number 1 in Japan, the only English-language series to do so. That detail is particularly meaningful. One Piece is a Japanese creation. It is one of Japan's most beloved cultural exports. For an American-produced English-language adaptation to debut at number 1 in Japan tells you that the people closest to the source material, the people for whom the story is most personal, consider the adaptation worthy. The slight decrease in viewership from Season 1 was analyzed and explained in various ways. Some pointed to the nearly 3-year gap between seasons, which may have caused some casual viewers to drift away. Some noted the different time of year. Season 1 launched in late summer, when more people were available to stream, while Season 2 dropped in early March during the school year. Some suggested that the theatrical screening events, while a celebration for dedicated fans, may have drawn some viewers away from the streaming count. Total runtime runs 481 minutes, roughly 30 minutes longer than Season 1's full run. The critical praise has been consistent in several areas. The performances, especially the work done to bring Chopper to life through Michaela Hoover's voice and motion capture, are praised widely. The emotional depth of the Drum Island arc, particularly the Hiriluk and Chopper storyline, has been called the season's crowning achievement. The world building, the way each new island feels genuinely different and genuinely strange, has been held up as an example of how live-action adaptations of fantastical source material should be handled. Criticisms, where they exist, tend to focus on pacing. 8 episodes covering 5 arcs is an ambitious task, and there are moments where the story moves very quickly, where a scene or a relationship that would benefit from more space gets compressed in the interest of forward momentum. Some critics felt that the Whiskey Peak arc in particular was resolved too cleanly and too fast. Others wished there had been more time with Dory and Broggy in Little Garden before the story had to move on. There were also some who found the tonal balance between comedy and drama occasionally unsteady. One Piece as a franchise lives in a very specific emotional key that is simultaneously goofy and devastating. And not every scene in the season manages that balance perfectly. But the ones that do are spectacular enough to make the occasional misstep easy to forgive. One Rotten Tomatoes review from Inverse noted that while the show is absolutely not realistic, that is fundamentally not the point, and that the formula of wild adventure and deep emotional truth is one that does not get old. Another critic from Inverse noted that the show is doubling down on the baffling style that made Season 1 divisive for some, but found themselves getting on its wacky little wavelength about halfway through the season, calling it clumsy but undeniably infectious love letter. The audience score of 96% tells its own story. This is a show that the people who watch it genuinely love, not appreciate, not admire, love. And the distinction matters because One Piece has always been a franchise built on love rather than critical calculation. One of the things that separates One Piece from almost every other adventure story ever told is that it operates on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, it is a show about pirates sailing around finding treasure and fighting bad guys. That surface is genuinely entertaining and genuinely fun. But underneath that surface, there is an entire architecture of meaning that rewards people who pay close attention. Season 2 was particularly rich in this regard. Let's go back through what we have already covered and look at it from a different angle. Let us look at what the show is doing when it thinks you are just watching the action. When Luffy stands at the execution platform in Loguetown, the show is not just staging a cool moment at a famous location. It is making a statement about legacy and what it means to continue a story that someone else started. GOLD. Roger died on that platform. His death created the world that Luffy is now sailing through. Everything about the age of pirates. Everything about the Grand Line being the most contested sea in the world. Everything about bounties and marine pursuit, and the whole dangerous game that Luffy has chosen play. All of it traces back to that moment on that platform. And now Luffy stands there, not with grief or with reverence, but with excitement. Because to Luffy, Roger's story did not end on that platform. It became fuel. It became the reason the race exists. This is a very specific philosophical argument that the show is making. It is saying that the deaths and sacrifices of the people who came before us do not have to be tragedies if what they left behind becomes a foundation for something new. Roger did not win. He died. But his death lit a fire that is still burning 20 years later in the heart of a rubber boy from East Blue. What does it mean to win if your dream outlives you and grows in the hearts of people you never even met? The answer One Piece gives is that winning and losing are not the point. The point is whether you lived in a way that mattered, whether you set something in motion that kept going after you were gone. Roger set something in motion that is still going. Hiriluk set something in motion that is still going, living in Chopper's hands and Chopper's heart, and the dream of curing every disease in the world. The quack doctor, who could barely heal a cold, gave the world a doctor who can cure anything. That is not irony. That is legacy. Laboon waiting at the mountain is one of the season's most deceptively simple scenes. A whale, a mountain, a promise. But think about what it actually means. Laboon is an animal, and yet the show asks us to believe that he understands what a promise is, that he knows what waiting means, that he experiences something close to hope when each new ship comes down the mountain, because maybe this time it is them. Maybe this time the people who said they would come back have finally come back. And then Luffy does something that is either brilliant or crazy or both. Instead of trying to explain to Laboon that his friends are gone, instead of trying to comfort him with a gentleness that would require Laboon to understand things that are too complicated and too painful, Luffy challenges him to a fight. He draws his mark. He makes a new promise. He gives the whale a new reason to wait. And, crucially, he makes that reason about the future rather than the past. This is not just a fun, quirky Luffy moment. This is a complete and coherent theory of how to help someone who is lost in grief. You do not take away their reason to wait. You give them a new one. You do not make them let go of the past. You give them something to look forward to in the future. Luffy did not replace Laboon's old friends. He added himself to the list of things worth waiting for. And maybe that is enough. Maybe that is all any of us can really do for each other when grief has settled in for the long stay. The giants of Little Garden, Dory and Broggy, represent something that the show does not spell out, but leaves clearly visible for anyone who looks. Their duel started over something small, a dispute about who caught a bigger fish or won a larger bounty. The exact details vary depending on which version of the story you are following. The point is that the original conflict was trivial, and yet both of them have given 100 years of their enormous lives to honoring it. There is something very human and very honest about this. We all know people who are locked in conflicts that outlasted their original reasons. We all know relationships that became defined by a grudge that nobody can quite remember starting. The giants are an extreme version of something ordinary in that contrast. The huge ancient beings trapped in a very small and very pointless loop is what makes their story funny and sad in equal measure. When the crew reveals that the duel was tampered with, when the conditions that produce recent results are shown to be fraudulent, both giants are faced with a choice. They could choose to continue anyway. They could say that honor demands it regardless of outside interference. But instead, they find something they could not manufacture themselves after 100 years, a legitimate reason to pause, to breathe, to look at each other across the battlefield with something other than combat in their eyes. This is a show arguing that sometimes the thing we need to break a cycle is not willpower or wisdom, but just a single changed circumstance, a single piece of new information that makes the old framework impossible to maintain. The giants could not choose peace, but they could choose to wait until the corrupted duel could be properly restarted. And waiting looks a lot like peace when you've been fighting for a century. Baroque Works itself is a layered symbol. It is a criminal organization structured like a corporation. It uses numbered code names. It has a hierarchy of agents organized by effectiveness. It is run with cold efficiency toward a specific profit-oriented goal, which in this case is the destabilization of a country for the financial and political benefit of the person at the top. This is not actually that different from how a lot of legitimate power structures work. The show is making that comparison quietly. The difference between Baroque Works and the world government that employs the Marines is not as clean as the Marines would like people think. Both are large hierarchical organizations using their power to serve the interests of whoever is at the top. The methods differ in degree rather than in kind. Vivi's entire arc is built around this recognition. She went undercover inside Baroque Works not just to find out who was threatening her country, but to understand how the threat worked. She learned that the organization that was trying to destroy Alabasta operated using the same basic principles as governments and business empires everywhere. Keep the people at the bottom in the dark, keep them competing with each other, concentrate real information and real power at the top, and present the whole structure as something inevitable and natural rather than as a choice that was made. The world government in One Piece is the ultimate expression of this. The celestial dragons, the nobles who sit at the top of the world's power structure and treat everyone else as less than human. The corruption that runs through the system that claims to bring order to the world. All of this is present in Season 2 in outline form. Vivi's father, King Cobra, at the diplomatic summit in the flashback, watching the world's leaders posture and maneuver, seeing the gap between what these leaders say about protecting their people and what they actually do. This is a show drawing a map of where the story is ultimately going. The Grand Line is not just a sea. It is a journey toward the truth of how the world actually works. And the truth is ugly. But the show believes and insists that you believe alongside it that ugly truths are still better than comfortable lies. The red hat that Chopper wears is the most loaded symbol in the season. It belonged to Hiriluk, who is gone. Every time you see Chopper wearing that hat, you are seeing a child carrying the memory of a father. The hat does not fit perfectly. It sits a little too large on Chopper's small head, which is entirely intentional. He has not grown into it yet. He is still becoming the person who deserves to wear it, but he never takes it off. There is a moment late in the Drum Island arc where Chopper is standing in the snow and the hat casts a specific shadow across his face, and for just a second the shadow makes him look like Hiriluk, like the hat is completing something, like the memory stored in the fabric is projecting itself onto whoever wears it. This is cinematography doing emotional work that dialogue could never do as efficiently. The Going Merry itself functions as a character in One Piece in ways that the show has been slowly establishing. It is not just a ship. It is the home that the crew chose together. Every new crew member who comes aboard changes the ship slightly, leaves a small mark. Chopper sits on the deck and looks out at the sea for the first time as part of this family. And the ship feels slightly different, slightly fuller. The show earns this feeling by consistently treating the Going Merry as a living thing rather than a vehicle. The eternal pose that Sanji finds in Little Garden is small and easy to miss as just a plot device, but it is actually a symbol of the way the story operates in general. An eternal pose is locked onto one specific destination. It does not shift or adapt or recalibrate. It always points home. In the middle of the Grand Line, where everything is chaotic and uncertain and constantly changing, having something that always points home is not just useful. It is a statement. You can go anywhere. You can face anything. But you always know where you're going. And right now, home means Alabasta for Vivi, and the eternal pose is her heart expressed as a navigational instrument. The contrast between the log pose and the eternal pose also carries meaning. The log pose is adaptive. It latches onto whatever island is nearest and slowly learns it before pointing to the next one. It is a symbol of a journey that discovers itself as it goes. The eternal pose is fixed. It has a destination, and it never wavers. The crew needs both. They need Nami's log pose to navigate the unknown, and they need the eternal pose to remember where they are ultimately going. The story needs both too. It needs the freedom to discover and the commitment to a destination. Snow in Drum Island is used beautifully as a symbol of isolation made visible. The entire island is frozen in a particular kind of grief that manifests as weather. The people of Drum Kingdom were abandoned by their leader, and the world around them reflects that abandonment. It is cold. It is white. It is a landscape that tells you immediately that something is wrong here, that something warm has been removed, and the cold rushed in to fill the space. The cherry blossom image that Hiriluk dreamed of, the idea that a special powder could make the snow bloom pink, is One Piece at its most mythological. Cherry blossoms in Japanese culture are deeply associated with the beauty of impermanence. They bloom briefly and fall quickly, and their beauty is inseparable from their brevity. Hiriluk was a doctor whose life was brief and whose methods were mostly ineffective, and who died for someone he loved. He was, by almost any practical measure, a failure. And yet his dream lives in Chopper, and his dream will one day, in the larger story of One Piece, become real. The cherry blossoms will bloom over Drum Island. That moment happens later in the manga and anime, and it is one of the most genuinely moving things a franchise has ever done. Season 2 is planting those seeds very deliberately, watering them with grief, knowing that a future season will harvest something extraordinary. Making One Piece live action is not a small task. The source material is defined by images that should not work in live action. A man with a rubber body. A woman who can read any language ever written. A cyborg who shoots cola-powered beams from his stomach. A skeleton who plays violin. These are not things that naturally translate to the visual language of live-action television. Season 1 solved this problem largely by committing completely to the visual style of the manga rather than trying to naturalize it. Season 2 continued and deepened that commitment. The show does not try to make the strange things seem normal. It makes the normal things seem strange, which is the opposite approach and also the correct one for this material. The practical effects work for Drum Island was significant. Real snow, real frozen breath in frigid temperatures, real physical exertion on sets built to convey extreme cold. This groundedness in physical reality makes the emotional scenes land harder because they happen in a world that your body can feel even through a screen. Eiichiro Oda visited the cast and crew on set during production and was visibly moved by what he saw. He has been clear throughout the production process that he considers this adaptation to be a true continuation of his vision, rather than a separate interpretation of it. That approval carries through the finished product. There is a coherence to the show's vision that comes from everyone working from the same foundational understanding of what One Piece is and what it is trying to say. Bringing Chopper to life was the season's biggest technical challenge. The production used a combination of CGI and puppetry to render Chopper, with Michaela Hoover providing both voice and facial capture performance. The risk with Chopper is significant because he is the most beloved character in the entire franchise for a very large number of fans. Getting him wrong would have been catastrophic. Getting him right, capturing the exact specific combination of adorable and heartbreaking that makes Chopper Chopper, required real artistry. The performance capture technology used for Chopper's face allows him to express emotions with a range and subtlety that pure CGI rendering would not achieve. When Chopper cries, you see the specific shape of his grief. When he laughs, you see the specific shape of his joy. He does not look like a cartoon character. He looks like a living being who happens to be a reindeer who ate a devil fruit, and that distinction makes every scene he is in land the way it needs to. The casting choices across the season are uniformly excellent. Bringing in Katie Seagal as Dr. Correa is the kind of casting decision that makes you say, of course, the moment you see her on screen. Correa needs to be formidable and funny and secretly warm under a hard exterior, and Seagal plays all those notes simultaneously without making any of them feel performed. She is just that person. You believe her completely. The actors playing Mr. 5, Ms. Valentine, Mr. 3, and Miss Golden Week all understood the assignment in different ways. These are Baroque Works agents of varying levels of threat and absurdity, and the performances find the specific register of each character. How serious they play the power, how much to lean into the strangeness, where the comedy lives inside the threat. The directors brought in for specific episodes also deserve recognition. Different directors handle different arcs, and the visual texture shifts slightly between them in ways that serve the material. The Loguetown episodes have a different visual energy from the Drum Island episodes, which is correct because Loguetown is about excitement and potential, and Drum Island is about grief and healing and the specific cold beauty of winter. For fans of the manga and anime who come to the live-action show expecting a direct beat-for-beat reproduction, Season 2 will offer some surprises. The show does not adapt the source material with rigid fidelity. It uses the source material as a foundation, and then builds on top of it in ways that serve the specific needs of live-action television. Some of these differences are structural. The manga and anime take considerably more time, with each arc. Little Garden, the anime, is a multi-episode adventure that unfolds at a pace that allows every character beat to breathe at full length. The live-action show condenses this while trying to preserve every emotional core. Some differences are creative choices made to serve specific thematic goals. The flashback to the diplomatic summit, showing King Cobra and Wapol, was not in the original source material at that point in the story. It was added specifically to establish the contrast between different kinds of leadership before the show arrives fully in Alabasta. This is an adaptation choice that actually strengthens the material by giving the upcoming story better foundations than the original structure provided at this point. Some differences are practical necessities. Certain characters and plot elements from the source material are folded together or reordered or introduced earlier or later than they appear in the manga, because the needs of an 8-episode season are different from the needs of a serialized manga that has been running for nearly 3 decades. The important question is whether these changes honor or undermine the spirit of the original work. The consensus among fans and critics who know the source material deeply seems to be that they honor it, that the people making the show understand what One Piece is fundamentally about, and make their changes in service of that understanding rather than in opposition to it. Oda's involvement and approval supports this assessment. There's a version of One Piece adaptation that could be made by people who love the plot of One Piece but do not understand the heart of it. That version would get the events right and miss the point entirely. What this show has consistently done is the opposite. It occasionally gets events slightly wrong and consistently gets the heart exactly right. And the heart is the whole thing. Season 1 of One Piece had a specific and very difficult job. It had to prove that this could work. It had to take a concept that had failed in previous adaptation attempts and demonstrate that with the right approach, the right cast, and the right creative framework, One Piece's live-action television was not just possible but excellent. Season 1 accomplished that job. The 86% critical score and the massive viewership numbers confirmed it. Season 2 has a different and in some ways harder job. It has to take what was proven in Season 1 and expand it. It has to say, yes, it worked once, and it can work again, and it can go further. It has to introduce more characters, more worlds, more emotional complexity, and deliver all of it at a higher level than what came before. It has to take the leap of faith that Season 1 extended to the audience and pay it back with interest. Season 2 does this by going bigger in precisely the right ways. The world of the Grand Line is genuinely wilder and more varied than the East Blue, and the show embraces that variety rather than trying to smooth it into something more manageable. Each island is a different genre, almost. Loguetown is a western frontier town energy. Whisky Peak is noir heist thriller. Little Garden is prehistoric survival horror, filtered through buddy comedy. Drum Island is a fairy tale about winter and grief. The emotional range expands too. Season 1 was primarily about found family and the freedom of following your dream. Those themes are still present in Season 2, but they're joined by themes of loss and legacy, and the cost of leadership, and the nature of belonging in a world that tries constantly to tell you that you do not belong. Season 2 is darker than Season 1 in places, and more beautiful in others, and the combination of darkness and beauty is what One Piece as a franchise is actually built on. The Chopper story represents the season's highest achievement in this regard. Season 1 had its emotional moments. Nami's backstory, Zoro's promise, the crew's first real coming together as a family. These were affecting and real. But the Hiriluk and Chopper story in Season 2 hits a different register. It is not just emotional. It is the kind of story that changes your relationship with the show going forward. Because once you know that the show can do that, once you know it can tell a story that devastating and that beautiful within a world that cheerful and that colorful, you trust it completely. One Piece live action Season 2 exists at an interesting moment in the history of entertainment. The live-action anime adaptation has been a troubled genre for decades. The failures have been spectacular, and the successes have been rare. Season 1 proved the genre could work. Season 2 is helping establish that it can sustain itself. It is building the case that long-form adaptation of beloved anime, with the right creative team and the right level of source material involvement, is not just viable, but worth doing. This matters beyond One Piece specifically. There are hundreds of beloved manga and anime properties that fans have dreamed of seeing translated to live action. Most of those dreams have ended in disappointment. One Piece Season 2 strengthens the argument that the dream does not have to end that way. That with care and commitment and the genuine participation of the people who created the source material, adaptation can be a form of expansion rather than dilution. The show has also done something significant for the franchise itself. When Season 2 launched, Season 1 immediately began climbing the charts again, reaching number 7 in viewership that same week. New fans who discovered the story through the live-action show are going to the anime and the manga in significant numbers. The adaptation is not replacing the original, but amplifying it, sending waves of new readers and viewers back to the source. That is what great adaptation does. It does not complete the story. It expands the audience for it. One Piece as a franchise is one of the highest-selling manga series in history. The anime has been running for over 25 years. The merchandise, the games, the films, the cultural footprint of the story in Japan, and increasingly around the world is enormous. But for years, there was a version of the story that was inaccessible to people who had not grown up with anime or who found the entry point of a 1,000-plus episode anime series too daunting. The live-action show is that entry point. It is the door that was not there before. And Season 2 makes that door wider and more welcoming. Iñaki Godoy as Luffy grows measurably as a performer between Season 1 and Season 2. In Season 1, he was electrifying, but occasionally the work showed in ways that let you see the effort. In Season 2, he has fully inhabited this character in a way that makes the effort invisible. Luffy is just there, present, alive, completely committed to the reality of every scene. The mountain climb sequence in Drum Island is a masterclass in physical performance. He is carrying two people through a blizzard, and he makes you feel every step of it without making it feel like performance. It just feels true. Mackenyu as Zoro has found the exact balance between menace and warmth that the character requires. Zoro is not warm on the surface. He is sparing with words, fiercely independent, almost aggressively self-contained. But there is a warmth underneath that shows in specific moments. The way he looks at Luffy when he thinks no one is watching, the way he handles the aftermath of the Whisky Peak battle, without celebration, just quiet acknowledgement that the job is done. Mackenyu finds those moments and lets them breathe. Emily Rudd as Nami has more due emotionally this season than last, and she delivers. Nami's illness and dependency in Drum Island puts Rudd in scenes that require stillness rather than action, vulnerability rather than competence, and she is completely convincing in that register. The scenes between Nami and Dr. Correja on Drum Island give both actresses room to let their characters recognize something in each other, and the recognition is played with real subtlety. Jacob Romero as Usopp is the season's consistent source of both comedy and unexpected emotional resonance. His little garden sequence, where he has to be brave because the alternative is watching his friends die, is the season's most complete character arc for anyone who is not Chopper. He starts the season exaggerating his own courage and ends at having actually demonstrated it. That growth is earned because Romero plays every step of the journey honestly. Taz Skylar as Sanji continues to be one of the show's consistent pleasures. Sanji is a character who is genuinely complex, a romantic and a warrior and a cook and someone with a past that is darker than anything Season 2 reveals. And Skylar plays all those layers simultaneously without letting any of them become caricature. The scene where Sanji drags himself out of bed with cracked ribs to check on Nami because he simply cannot not check on her is one of the season's most quietly effective moments. Charithra Chandran as Vivi carries the season's moral weight. Every scene she is in is freighted with what she knows about what is coming, about what Crocodile is planning, about the cost that Alabasta is already paying before the crew even arrives. She plays that knowledge as a kind of controlled urgency, like someone who's been running a very long time and knows they cannot stop yet, but also cannot stop thinking about what happens when they finally can. Michaela Hoover's performance as Chopper, delivered entirely through voice and facial capture, is the season's most technically demanding and emotionally rewarding work. She found the specific frequency of Chopper's vulnerability, his longing, his sudden joy, his deep grief, and she delivers it through a digital medium in ways that make you completely forget you are watching a CGI reindeer. By episode 7, you are not watching a technical achievement. You are watching a child lose a parent. The medium becomes invisible, and emotion is all that remains. Katie Seagal's Dr. Correa is exactly what she needed to be, and then slightly more. She is funny, and she is fierce, and she is secretly the warmest person in the room, even though she would deny it to her death. The scenes between Correa and Chopper carry the weight of years of complicated relationship. Teacher and student, the woman who continued what Hiriluk started, the doctor who saved Chopper by making him a doctor himself. Seagal plays all that history in every look she gives the little reindeer. The Grand Line is not just a plot device. It is the show's central metaphor made geographic. It is a place where normal rules do not apply, where the weather changes without warning, where the islands are impossibly strange, where the challenges are larger than anything you face before you cross a mountain. And it is also the place where the rewards, the wonders, the discoveries, the connections are larger too. Every island the crew visits in the Grand Line is a world unto itself. Cactus Island with Whisky Peak is a city that exists to seduce. Little Garden is the earth at the beginning of time. Drum Island is a kingdom frozen in grief. Each island has its own visual language, its own emotional register, its own lesson. Together, they form a curriculum. The Grand Line teaches, sometimes gently and sometimes brutally, but always with something to say. The Baroque works conspiracy that threads through the Grand Line section of Season 2 also serves the world building by revealing that the Grand Line is not just wild and strange, but actively dangerous in ways that go beyond weather and sea monsters. Someone is operating in it with a plan. Someone is using the chaos of the Grand Line as cover for a very specific and very calculated kind of evil. Crocodile did not choose Alabasta randomly. He chose it because it is on the Grand Line, which means the world government's attention is stretched thin there, which means he can do what he is doing for longer before anyone powerful enough to stop him notices. This reveals something about how power actually works in the One Piece world. The Grand Line is supposed to be under the jurisdiction of the world government and the Marines, but that jurisdiction is theoretical more than actual. The islands of the Grand Line are too strange and too varied and too numerous for any one authority to fully control, which means the people who actually control them are whoever is strong enough or clever enough or ruthless enough to hold on, and Crocodile is all three. Understanding this makes the Straw Hats' position clearer. They are not just adventurers stumbling through a wild sea. They are moving through a sea that is already contested, already shaped by the plans of powerful people, already scarred by the decisions of leaders who prioritize their own interests over the people they were supposed to protect. Wapol and Drum Island. Whatever King Baroque works intends to put in place in Alabasta, the diplomatic posturing and the casual cruelty of the celestial dragons glimpsed at the World Summit. The Grand Line reveals the world as it actually is, and it is not pretty, but the going merry sails through it anyway. A small ship with 6 people and a borrowed navigation system, and enough food and hold for a few weeks, and more courage than sense. And the show asks you, sincerely, to believe that this is enough, that the right people with the right hearts can sail into the worst sea in the world, and make it better just by being there. That is a very specific and very deliberate kind of optimism. It is not naive. The show does not pretend the world is not broken. It shows you exactly how broken it is, island by island, story by story. But it insists that broken does not mean defeated, that there's always a Luffy willing to climb the mountain, always a Chopper willing to pick up the red hat and keep running, always a crew willing to sail toward the storm instead of away from it. The soundtrack of One Piece Season 2 deserves more attention than it typically receives in discussions about the show. Sonia Belousova and Giona Ostinelli have created something that functions not just as score, but as emotional infrastructure. The music does not just underline what is happening. It tells you what the scene means before the dialogue gets there. Each major character has a musical theme that appears in variations throughout the season. Luffy's theme is built around a rising motif, notes that keep climbing, that keep reaching upward, which is exactly what Luffy himself always does. When a theme appears during the mountain climb in Drum Island, it is transformed from its usual bouncy adventurous mode into something slower and more sustained. The same notes but stretched by effort, by determination, by the weight of 2 people on his back. Chopper's theme is the most delicate in the score, built around high strings that suggest both innocence and fragility. When it first appears, it is tentative, almost apologetic, as if it is not sure it deserves to be heard. By the end of the season, when Chopper comes running back to join the crew, the theme has grown. It has added instruments. It has depth and warmth that was not there at the beginning. The music charts the exact emotional journey the character takes. The villain themes in Season 2 are also more sophisticated than in Season 1. The Baroque works theme, which appears in various forms depending on which age we are dealing with, is built around a waltz rhythm that sounds elegant and formal at first, but becomes increasingly sinister as you realize the elegance is a mask. Mr. Three's version of it has an almost whimsical quality that makes the horror of what he actually does, coating living people in wax, feel more disturbing rather than less because the music does not match the action. The Drum Island score in general is the season's most ambitious musical chapter. The soundscape for the island mixes traditional winter music imagery, cold strings, sparse piano, howling textures that suggest wind and isolation, with warmer themes that represent the human stories happening within that cold landscape. Hiriluk scenes have a specific musical palette, warm and slightly broken. Like music played on an instrument that is not quite in tune, but is being played with so much love that it does not matter. When he is gone, that specific warmth disappears from the score, and you notice its absence. The theatrical song Pray to the Sun, which bookends the season in marketing materials and plays over key emotional moments, serves as the season's thesis statement in musical form. It is a song about looking towards something you cannot yet see, about moving forward in the belief that the thing you are looking for exists even though you have no proof of it. Every Straw Hat is doing exactly that. Every character who matters in the story is doing exactly that. The song is the show's heart expressed in 3.5 minutes. For viewers who are new to One Piece and who have found themselves pulled into the world of the live-action show, it is worth saying something about where this story is ultimately going. Not in detail, not in a way that spoils the specific events, but in a way that helps you understand the scale of what you have signed on to. One Piece is a story about the truth, about what the world's governments have been hiding for 800 years, about a history that was deliberately erased and the people who are trying to recover it, about a weapon so powerful that the people who wielded it were destroyed along with their enemies, about the road poem glyphs and the ancient weapons and the void century that no one is supposed to know about a woman named Nico Robin who is the only person in the world who can read the language that the truth is written in, which is why the whole world has been trying to kill her since she was a child. All of that is coming. Season 2 plants seeds for it in almost every episode, if you know where to look. Vivi's father at the World Summit, the poem glyphs that appear in the background of certain scenes. Miss All Sunday's interest in specific artifacts and locations. The weight of things unsaid between characters who know more than they are showing. The grand line is the path to the truth. That is why only the strongest and the most determined can sail it. That is why the world government would rather the grand line remain associated with dangerous pirates and lawlessness than have people understand that the sea itself is a road to something the government desperately wants to keep buried. The One Piece is not just a treasure. It is proof of something. And finding it would change everything. Luffy does not know this yet. He just wants to be king of the pirates. He just wants to have the freest life on the sea. But the story has a way of putting the right people in the right positions to stumble onto truths they were not looking for. And when Luffy eventually understands what the One Piece actually represents, the dream of a free life and the dream of uncovering the world's hidden truth are going to turn out to be the same dream. That is what this story is building toward. Season 2 is still in the early chapters. Season 3 in Alabasta will deepen everything. And the story beyond that, the story that the show will tell if it continues for as long as it deserves to, is one of the most ambitious and most human pieces of long-form storytelling in the history of the medium. There are a lot of shows competing for your attention. That has always been true, but it is more true now than it has ever been. The streaming landscape is enormous and growing, and the amount of excellent television being made right now is genuinely staggering. In that environment, the decision to invest your time and emotional energy in a show is not a small one. Here is the argument for One Piece. It is a show that believes in you. It believes that you can care about a talking reindeer. It believes that you can find genuine meaning in a story about rubber pirates in a world where the ocean defies physics. It does not hedge its bets or sand down its strangeness to make itself easier to sell. It commits completely to being exactly what it is and trusts that if it does that with enough craft and enough love, you will meet it where it lives. That trust is itself a rare thing. Most entertainment in the current landscape is designed to minimize risk by minimizing commitment. Shows are made to be watchable, consumable, enjoyable enough, but not requiring too much from the audience, not asking them to feel too deeply or believe too completely. One Piece asks a lot. It asks you to believe in giant whales and cursed fruits and the power of a dream. It asks you to cry over a reindeer. It asks you to care about a crew of nobodies with impossible aspirations sailing toward a treasure that may or may not exist. And if you say yes to those asks, if you decide to meet the show in the enormous and earnest place it occupies, what you get in return is one of the most emotionally generous stories being told anywhere in popular entertainment today. You get Luffy climbing the mountain. You get Chopper running back to the ship. You get Laboon at the base of the mountain, waiting. You get Hiriluk eating the soup. You get a show that thinks pirates can change the world. That the right crew, the right ship, and the right dream are enough to sail through anything. That the people who do not fit anywhere are exactly the people who can build something new. The Going Merry is heading for Alabasta. Crocodile is waiting. Nico Robin has secrets the show has barely begun to reveal. And somewhere out at the end of the most dangerous sea in the world, the treasure of the Pirate King is waiting for whoever is brave enough and foolish enough and absolutely certain enough to go find it. The adventure continues, and it is absolutely worth being part of it. Set sail again. The best is still ahead. Season 2 ends on Drum Island, not Alabasta, a deliberate production decision to split the Arabasta saga across 2 seasons. After defeating Tyrant King Wapol, Chopper joins the Going Merry as the crew's doctor. Sir Crocodile and Nico Robin are confirmed as the next season's central threats. The decision to end Season 2 before reaching Alabasta was confirmed as intentional by the showrunners and by Eiichiro Oda himself. Alabasta is too big and too important to rush. It is one of the most emotionally significant arcs in the entire One Piece manga, and giving a full season rather than trying to cram it into the back half of Season 2 is exactly the right call. The season's final images are the Going Merry sailing forward with its new crew, now 6 instead of 5, heading into a confrontation that all of them can feel coming. Vivi knows what waits in Alabasta. She knows the scale of what Baroque Works has planned. She has been running from and toward this moment for years. And now she is not running alone. Season 3 was greenlit in August 2025 and entered production in November 2025. Ian Stokes joins returning showrunner Joe Trotch as co-showrunner. The entire season will be set in Alabasta, making it structurally unlike the first 2 seasons, which hop between multiple islands. New confirmed cast of Season 3 includes Zolo Meriduena as Port Gasti, Ace, Colascola as Bon Clay, Daisy Head as Miss Doublefinger, and Otto Otto as Mr. One. Production is expected to wrap in June 2026. With a realistic release window of late 2027. Port Gasti, Ace is Luffy's older brother. His casting in Season 3 is enormous news for fans of the franchise because Ace's role in the larger story of One Piece is one of the most significant and most emotionally loaded in the entire series. Zolo Meriduena, who is known for Cobra Kai, brings exactly the right energy to a character who is simultaneously charming and heartbreaking. The decision to set the entire 3rd season in Alabasta rather than island hopping, as the first 2 seasons did, is fascinating from a storytelling perspective. It means Season 3 is going to feel different in structure and texture from everything that has come before. It is going to have the weight of a single sustained conflict rather than the episodic adventure format, which may be exactly what the Alabasta story requires to reach its full emotional potential. The teasing of Crocodile throughout Season 2 has done its job. By the end of the season, audiences who are new to the story know that Crocodile is the threat. They have seen his agents, his reach, his cruelty expressed through every Baroque Works operative the Straw Hats have faced. And they know that whatever is coming in Alabasta is going to be larger and more dangerous than anything the crew has faced so far. Nico Robin's position at the end of Season 2 is deliberately ambiguous. She appears to serve Baroque Works, but her actions do not fully support that allegiance. She is a woman with a history more complicated than anything the show has yet revealed, and the question of whose side she is really on is one that Season 3 will have to answer. For longtime fans, the final image of Season 2 carries a specific kind of anticipation. They know what Alabasta means. They know what it costs. They know which moments are coming, and they are already bracing themselves. For new fans, the final image carries a different kind of anticipation, pure excitement, the feeling that you are watching something that is just getting started, that the world is bigger than anything you have yet seen, and that the best parts are still ahead. Conclusion: the question of whether One Piece Season 2 is worth your time has a very simple answer. Yes, absolutely and without reservation. But the more interesting question is who it is for. And the answer to that is also simpler than people might expect. It is for anyone who has ever felt like they did not fit anywhere. It is for anyone who has made a promise they intended to keep. It is for anyone who ever had a dream that seemed too big and too far away and too unlikely and chose to chase it anyway. It is for anyone who understands that the people you choose are more family than the people you are given. It is for anyone who has loved someone so much that losing them left a shape in the air where they used to be. Season 2 is bigger than Season 1 in almost every measurable way. More islands, more characters, more emotional range, more visual ambition, a broader scope, a deeper understanding of what this story is trying to say. Critics have called it bigger, better, and more ambitious in almost every way than its freshman voyage. That assessment is accurate. The first season was a miracle of sorts, proving that the impossible thing could be done. The second season is what happens when you take that miracle and trust it, expand it, commit to it fully. The show is not perfect. Nothing that attempts this much ever is. There are moments that move too fast. There are emotional beats that need more space than they get. There are tonal shifts that do not quite land as smoothly as they might. But the things it does right in ways that are hard to forget. The mountain climb in the snow, the whale waiting at the mountain, the cherry blossoms that exist only as a chemical dream in a quack doctor's notebook, the little reindeer running back to the ship after he said he was not coming. The show never shies away from its anime roots, choosing to revel in One Piece's swashbuckling silliness, extreme sense of style, and powerful messages of optimism, adventure, and making your dreams come true. That is the thing about One Piece. At its core, under all the devil fruits and secret organizations and giant whales and prehistoric islands and battles and betrayals and tears, it is a story about the extraordinary human capacity for hope, for getting on the ship even when the sea is dangerous, for promising to come back even when you cannot be certain you will, for choosing your crew and then choosing them again every single day. Season 2 understands that. Every decision made in its production, from the casting to the cinematography to the music to the way it handles Chopper's devastating and beautiful backstory, comes from a place of genuine love for the source material and genuine respect for the audience. It is the work of people who believe that a talking reindeer crying over a dead man matters. And they are right. It does. The Straw Hats are heading for Alabasta. Crocodile is waiting. The storm is coming. And somewhere out there in the Grand Line, at the end of the most dangerous sea in the world, the One Piece is still waiting to be found. The adventure is just getting started, and it has never been more worth following. If you are watching this for the first time, welcome. You picked a very good time to come aboard. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which moment hit you the hardest. Tell me which character you fell for and when. Tell me if you cried at episode 7. Tell me if you watched all 8 episodes in one night, because if you did, you already know. And if you have not yet, you are in for something special. Set sail.